I once heard the critic George Steiner say, this was at a drama festival that I was involved in many, many years ago. Steiner said, actually, the plays of Molière and the novels of Stendhal teach us more about the psychology of human beings than all the laboratories that have studied cognition combined. That's an overstatement, but there's something profoundly right about what he's saying.
Science aims at objectivity and impartiality, and art and literature aim at a fine-tuned reaction or response to sensation and emotion and perception.
There were any number of efforts in the past to try to integrate humanistic approach and a scientific approach into one coherent, meaningful, be-all and end-all perspective, and none of them have panned out that well, although one might add that we're still reading the Greeks, and we're still reading the Elizabethans, and so, they certainly haven't failed altogether. Human beings are not only fitness-maximizing gene machines, although I think they are that too. That's a biological view of what all living things are. When the two approaches can talk to each other, I think we just get a much richer science, and we get a much richer humanities, and ultimately a much richer sense of what it means to be Homo sapiens.
Literature's amazing. It's amazing that wherever you go in world history, and whenever you go there, so across cultures, across centuries, people devote such massive amounts of their time to listening to stories, telling stories, making stuff up about fake people, and being enthralled by it. I would argue that in modern societies, and a lot of traditional societies too, outside of working and sleeping, most people spend most of their time absorbed in landscapes of make-believe.
We are a species that likes to monitor one another. We want to know what others in our group are doing. Chimpanzees are high social monitors, but nothing to the same extent as humans. We are absolutely obsessive about keeping track of one another. And if you can offer a story that, sometimes when we look around, there's nothing much going in our social circle. But if you create a story with high impact events, characters out of the ordinary, and you throw those together, people just find that they can't stop attending until they hear the resolution. A key idea in my explanation of art, which is basically that it's a derivative of play, that it's a kind of cognitive play with pattern, and because we are cognitive animals, pattern matters so much. High quality information that we can make good inferences from matter to us. So just as other animals play fight, play flight, because they're crucial modes for survival, and if they can extend the range of their options, fine-tune their sensitivities and so on in those fields, then in moments of urgency they'll be able to cope better. For us, information is always, not necessarily a matter of urgency, but it's a mode in which we live.
Major events have taken place over the past 100,000 years in the development of the human mind. The emergence of full symbolic thinking is clearly one of the major developments. Something happened, probably some kind of linguistic event, some little bit of neurological rewiring that was a tip-over event that took all the gradually developing capacities for human sociality and human communication and human technology and put them into overdrive in a major way. The biggest theoretical issue in evolutionary literary study is the question of the adaptive function of literature, whether there is one, and that issue, I think, ultimately will be answered in the positive. There is an adaptive function of literature, and it fits into the whole logic of the human revolution. That is, literature emerges as a result of this advance in symbolic capacity and cognitive flexibility, and it is a mediating force. It enables human beings to occupy an imaginative world distinct from, different from the immediate here and now, the perceptual present, to imagine their own selves and their own identities and their relation to a social environment and their relation to a larger structure of nature and a supernatural order, if they believe in one, and most people have, and to envision all of their activities within an imaginative context. And literature is one of the, and art generally is one of the chief media, along with religion and any kind of imaginative construct that feeds into this whole sort of imaginative universe that human beings occupy, and that isn't simply a kind of side effect or distraction from the business of living. It's part of the basic equipment of humanity.
Literature, stories, narrative, these are the mechanisms, basically, whereby cultures adapt to their environments by telling appropriate stories. There's a sense in which culture in general, and literature in particular, are like genes. They're like cultural genes. We behave the way we do, not directly from our genes, although, well, not entirely directly from our genes, only indirectly, directly from what we get from our cultures. And so what's happening now, and what I want to make sure happens, is that evolutionary psychologists, everyone who's approaching humanity from an evolutionary perspective, takes culture seriously, takes the flexible part of human nature seriously. Literature should not be taken as strict history. Ideally, you would have a strict history, and then you would have a literature, and you could compare them to each other. What literature does provide more of a direct record of is sort of psychological experiences and psychological processes. So there's a sense in which it is a more strict record of something, but it's like the interior experience of a culture as opposed to an objective record of things that happened. But of course, that's the only place that you're going to get that interior record. So it's extremely valuable from that standpoint.
In many ways, we don't have better understandings of what goes on in people's heads, the experience of being a human alive, than we do in plays like Hamlet or novels like Ulysses or perhaps Virginia Woolf. They have these wonderful representations of the many-sided experience of human living.
The cliche is that literature is a precious source of information about human nature. It's what people have said for eons. That literature sort of holds up a mirror to ourselves. And one of the reasons we study it is so we can learn about human nature. Now, for the last 30 or 40 years, literary scholars and other humanists and a lot of social scientists rejected the whole concept of human nature, so stopped contributing to that study. I'm suggesting that we should return to that view of things, that our job as literary scholars, as humanists, is to contribute to this sort of ancient, this ancient goal of all questers for knowledge, which is to know thyself. It goes back to the Delphic imperative. It goes back to Socrates. My central critique with my home field and with many other humanities fields is that over the last several decades, and probably stretching back further, but my critique is of the last several decades, we have done a bad job of accumulating more reliable and durable knowledge about the things we study. Outside of the historical and biographical branches of literary study, there's just very few ideas upon which most people could agree. Not questions about interpreting, a Walt Whitman poem, for instance. Probably the best method for doing that is the old-fashioned method of close reading and careful reasoning, and good scholarship and good erudition and all that stuff. But for other questions, they're really empirical questions. They're questions about what is the condition of the world, what is the condition of literary texts. They're fact-based questions, and we can use methods of the sciences to address some of those questions in a more rigorous fashion than we have in the past.